Hello everybody, how are you? Hope you are doing well. So we continue for the third chapters, how to write a good thesis, dissertation and FYP or even your assignments. So today we are going to discuss about methodology part, and this is the structure. We have first we discuss about the research design, then data collection methods, design of sampling like population, target, the frame sampling and technique of sampling, size of sampling. Then we will have research instrument. We have questionnaire design. If you are doing, primary data collection, we have a variable measurement or the measurement of the variables. Then we have questionnaire reliability. Also, if we are doing questionnaire validity, ethical consideration, pilot study. Also, if we are doing questionnaire, then the data analysis techniques. So, what is research design? There is so many types of research design that could be implemented in your study, and this is based on your objective of your study. So we have exploratory research, explanatory research, experimental research, descriptive, and others. So in here we are going to see some of them, not all, but the most famous or the most designs that researchers use frequently. So the research designs refer to an overall strategy that you choose to integrate the different components of the study in a coherent and logical way, thereby ensuring you will effectively address the research problem. It constitutes the blueprint for the collection, measurement, and analysis of the data. Means that is a plan of how we are going to collect the data, how you are going to analyze the data, and what method going to use to analyze the data. So the component of that plan or that research design is information needed, then data collection method to collect this information, then what are the measurement of and the scaling procedure, the measurement of the variable and how you can scale them, then what is the sample size or sampling process also, and what is the data analysis procedures. So this is will summarize all the research design. But before we start, let's see what are the types of research design. First, we have action research. So this is we follow a characteristics of cycle with adoption of an exploratory method, where here the data collected in various form. So we employ a new interventional strategies and keep repeating the cyclic process until sufficient understanding of that particular problem or phenomenon achieved. And this kind of research actually focus more on solving a problem. If you can see action research, so it is more about a solution or finding solution to our problems. It focuses more on conceptualizing and particularizing the problem and moving through several intervention and evaluation until the final solution is achieved. Means that process is cyclical, like a cycle. You keep doing and doing again, doing and repeating, repeat again and again until you will find the final or satisfactory solution for a problem. Then, what are the advantages of the axel research? It has some advantages and also it has some disadvantages. So the advantages are it focuses more on solution driven rather than testing theories. It's not, if for him it's not important a theory it is confirmed or not confirmed, but the most important for those who do axel research is to find solution to the problem. And practitioners keep learning consistently from their experience, while the researcher doing and repeating, he is learning something new. And also it has it has a direct relevance to practice and problem solving. So because it is a solution driven, so it is directly practical. Once you find a solution, you can apply it in real world. And researchers aim not to hide any control or preemption of a direction. It is like a transparency here. And what are the disadvantages? It is hard to do because it needs a lot of experience and a lot of time consuming. you are going to repeat and repeat again the process several times. It is much harder to write up because sometimes the repeating process and the complex process of conducting make it for you very difficult to come and gather and connect the ideas. And also researchers biasness may be some problem. As a researcher, you may also be biased in interpreting or reading some of the data, time consuming and complex to conduct, as we explained. And the second type is a case study design, which is an in-depth study focused only on one company or a group rather than on statistical survey, than on a population of a target population or group of people. So here in case study, you will take only one company, one group, and do an analysis on that study. So the focus is to narrow down the field of research into a narrowed and researchable scope, so that you will take only one study or one group of. So where it is useful for testing theories also, concept models, and also applicability to phenomenon in real world. So it means that your result can be applied in real world, and it is used when not much is known about phenomenon. So this type of research usually mostly focus in the analysis, the analysis do it in a way that presented in tables and figures rather than in statistical manners. What are the advantage and disadvantage of case study design? Advantage is help in understanding of a complex issues through a detailed conceptual analysis, because you are focusing only on one company or one group of research or of cultural group. Then therefore you are more detailed and you can understand every detail and every complexity on that. A variety of methodologies and sources can be applied to investigate research. So you can use different methods and different sources, not necessarily one type of data analysis or one type of method, but you can use different methods. And also it helps in examine contemporary real life situations. These companies, for example, or groups or facing real life problems, then you will find for them real life situations or solutions. Provide solution from application of concept and theories and extension of methods, and the design can provide detailed description of specific and rare cases. So sometimes you study a very rare case, that case happened only one or two times, then you can have a very detailed description of what happens. What are the disadvantages? Cannot be generalized, since there is only one single case or a small number of cases. Researcher biasness in the interpretation of the finding. Sometimes he like that company, so he go toward only the positive side and he show only that side. Inability to find cause and effect relationship, because it is not the main idea to find relationship between the variables and which one cause and which one effect. Not suitable for investigating a larger problem, and the finding of the case study could only apply to that particular case, as we explained. Sometimes maybe the finding for that particular company cannot apply to another company because they have different characteristics or different environment of business. Then we come to the most important one, or the most widely used, which is causal design. So used to measure what impact a specific change in one variable will have to another variable. So if there is changes in variable A, what impact lead to variable B? So causal explanation help test the hypothesis, and this type of research usually help us to test the hypothesis, to find relationship between variables, to find which variable affect another. So causal effect occurs when variation in an independent variable lead to or result on average in a variation in a dependent variable. So that way we say what is the impact of independent variable on the dependent variable. For your assignment, guys, I think that this is the most suitable one that you can use it in your assignment. But of course, if you decided to use other research design, then you are most welcome. So what are the advantages of a causal design? It helps to understand phenomenon by providing a causal link, between variables and eliminating other possibilities. It will show you that some variables have significant impact, others does not have any significance, so we eliminate them. We will know that other variables are not significantly contributing to that phenomenon. And replication is possible. You can replicate, the study or the design to other scenarios, to other contexts, in other different time period. A greater confidence that the study has internal validity. So we can make sure that the relationship between the construct or between the variables are valid, and therefore we have internal validity. What are the disadvantages? Or two variables could appear to be related, but actually they are not. And this is what happened. Basically, those two variables, by right, they don't have any relationship between them. But when we do the research, of course, effect, it could show us that actually they are related or correlated. And also difficulty in establishing conclusion about causal relationship due to the variety of extraneous and confounding variables that exist in a social environment. Sometimes we have mediating variables, moderating variables. Sometimes it's very difficult to determine or establish what really contribute to that phenomenon or no. This means causality can only be inferred, never proven. So we can say that there is a significant relationship or impact or effect between A and B, but we cannot prove it actually. Sometimes it is difficult also to establish which variable is the cause and which one actually is the effect. And here we go to another type of data analysis. We see it later in time series, Granger causality and others. So another type is also famous cross-sectional design, and this is very famous, where we do a multiple regression or a simple regression. So cross-sectional research design is a type of observational study that analyzes data from population or a representative subset at a specific point in time that is cross-sectional data. You collect, for example, you do questionnaire, you collect data in one time only. So the cross-sectional design can only measure differences between or from among variety of people, subject, or phenomena rather than changes. So it will not show us the changes as, for example, time series or longitudinal data. But this will show us only what is the differences between the groups or between the subject in that particular time. So what are the advantages? Advantages of cross-sectional research design are used to prove and or disprove assumption. If we have an assumption, let's say, is female and may have same purchasing characteristics, for example, we can use here, for example, ANOVA to prove that cross-sectional. Not costly to perform and does not require a lot of time, because you can gather information on a lot of you distribute so many questionnaires, to have the data help you to prove and disprove those assumptions. Captures a specific point in time only, contains multiple variables at time of the data snapshot. So you can have so many variables, you put them all together in order to understand the phenomenon. Also, the data can be used for various types of research. So that data, you can use it also in different types of research, not only cross-sectional research. Maybe you can use it in causal research. Maybe you can use it in other also descriptive research. Many findings and outcomes can be analyzed to create new theories, studies, or in-depth research. It helps you to find, different aspects of or advance the theory. What are the disadvantages? So the disadvantages are cannot be used to analyze behavior over a period of time. Means that if you find something that is applicable for that period of time, but after 10 years, the result or the finding may not be really applicable because people's behavior changed and does not help determine the cause and effect, another thing. And the timing of the snapshot is not guaranteed to be representative. Sometimes when you choose the timing, it is not that really the good time, to to actually to collect the data. So people, they are maybe facing, or they have faced some difficulties, risk shocks, let's say earthquake, they were emotional, so they answer not in really what we say an objective way. They may were very biased, or some sort of that. May face also some challenges putting together the sampling pool based on a variable of the population being studied. So this is maybe another shortage. What is descriptive design now? We have another type, is descriptive. You describe, or descriptive research design help you to provide answer to questions of who, what, when, where, and how associated with a particular research problem. But it describes the subject of research without covering why it happened. It will show you who, what, when, and where, and how, but it will not tell you why it happened. So this is type of descriptive research. Also, it has advantages like effective analysis, non-quantified topics and issues, and also the possibility to observe the phenomenon in a completely natural and unchanged natural environment. Also, the opportunity to integrate the qualitative and quantitative method of data collection together, and less time consuming than quantitative experiments. So actually, in descriptive research, it will give you a rich description of a phenomenon, answering all these questions: what happened, who make it happen, when it's happened, how it's happened. But of course, we cannot answer why it's happened. So you can use so many data like tables, graph to describe, and even you can use also statistical data analysis to describe a scenario, but cannot test or verify the research problem statistically. You cannot use, like, say you say it is significant or not significant. A research result may reflect certain level of bias due to the absence of statistical tests, and the majority of descriptive studies are not repeatable due to their observational nature. So it is in nature observational. It is not helpful in identifying a cause behind described phenomenon. So of course, since it's not particularly based on statistical tests, you cannot also find a cause and effect. And also we have an experimental design, which is one of also very famous design, and actually it is very benefit and helpful to finding and discovering phenomenon. But this type of research, experimental research, is a scientific approach to research where one or more independent variables are manipulated and applied to one or more dependent variables to measure their effect on the latter. Means that we take the effect of independent variable on the dependent variable, were usually observed and recorded over some time to aid researcher in drawing a reasonable conclusion regarding the relationship between these two variables. For example, I give you an example. You want to check which teaching method is better, online or physical. So here I will take this teaching method as independent variable, and I take CGPA of student as dependent variable, and see. So what I take two groups here. So I will take one group, I select them randomly, I teach them with the physical face-to-face, and another one group I will teach them face-to-face. Then after I will see their record, I record their CGPA over a period of time, 1 trimester, 2 trimester, 3 trimester, and see which perform better. So this is what we mean about experimental. We experiment. So what are advantages? Allow the researcher to control the situation, because you are able to control. Permit the researcher to identify the cause and effect relationship between the variables, which is very good, and support the ability to limit alternative explanation and to infer direct causal relationship in the study, so you can find any relationship between two variables. So the disadvantage is the result may not be generalized well to real world, and sometimes because an experiment is very difficult to have what we say a huge sample size, so the sample size should be very small, and we may have this problem of generalizability. It can be costly, if special equipment or facilities are needed, and also it's costly in terms of equipment and also in time. It needs a lot of time. So some research problems cannot be studied using experimental because of the ethical or technical reasons. For example, you want to experiment about one disease, or about child abuse. So you cannot experiment and go and abuse a child because that's illegal. So you cannot do a study about child abuse on experimental one. You go and abuse them, but you do it on cause effect maybe, or interviews or questionnaire or observation only. Then we have exploratory research design. Exploratory research design is conducted for a research problem when the researcher has no past data or only a few studies of reference. And sometimes this research is informal and unstructured. It serves as a tool for initial research that provide hypothetical or theoretical idea of the research problem. Make it in that way. When you have a phenomenon but you don't have any background, you don't have any theory, any concept, any model that explain it, so you don't have much information about that phenomenon. So you start by collecting the data by observation. You observe that phenomenon, collecting the data and analysis. This is qualitative in nature, not quantitative. Advantages of this exploratory research are useful approach for gaining background information. As we say, we can collect a lot of data. Flexible and can address research questions of all types, what, why, and how, which is very good. Can define new terms and clarify existing concepts because the data everything is original from your observation. And used to generate a formal hypothesis and develop more precise research problem, or we call it tentative hypothesis. So this is another subject. If I want to explain here how we develop them, it will take a lot of time. But also help establish research priorities, because everything, as we say, is unknown. So we will establish everything will be, valuable to understand that phenomenon. Disadvantages are small sample size, and thus findings are typically not generalizable to a population at large. And second, inhibit an ability to make definitive conclusion about the finding. Sometimes you can find it, but you are unable to make really a definitive or a confirmed conclusion, leading to only tentative result. As I say, when you develop an hypothesis, what we call a tentative hypothesis, because it is not tested yet, you develop it just based on observations. And lack of rigorous standards applied to method of data gathering and analysis, because it is unstructured. You are free, you know how to collect the data, but sometimes also that cause biasness of the researcher. When you observe, you observe, but actually when you analyze, you did not interpret the real scenario. Your observation did not allow you to explain or to interpret that analysis as what people they mean it, because you see the behavior, but you don't know really if this is not really what they mean about this behavior or no. Then we have another famous research design, longitudinal data or design. A longitudinal study or longitudinal survey or panel study, also panel data, is a research design that involves repeated observation of some variables, for example, people, countries, companies, over a short or long period of time. So we have cross-section plus time series. Longitudinal research design describes patterns of change and help establish the direction and magnitude of the causal relationship. So we can have a cause effect or causal relationship between the two variables. Measurements are taken on each variable over at least two distinct time of period. So at least we will have two different time of period, then we can say only we can have longitudinal research design. This allows researchers to measure change in variable over time, and it is type of observational study and is sometimes referred as to panel study or panel data. So what are the advantages? Longitudinal data allow the analysis of duration of a particular phenomenon. So we study phenomenon in different times, so we can observe the changes. Enables surveys researchers to get close to the kind of causal explanation usually attainable only with an experiment. Because the experiment, we say we can manipulate variables and we can change But this longitudinal data also, it can give us that type of explanation or causal explanation, since we are going to observe also those variables in different time and in different time periods, so we can see the changes. And the design permits the measurement of differences or change in variable terms from one period to another. For example, the description of patterns of change over time. And also, longitudinal studies facilitate the prediction of future outcomes based on earlier factors, because we have so many years or so many period of time, so we can predict the future based on the previous times. Then, but also it has so many disadvantages. The data collection method may change over time, and this is one of the problems. Sometimes you cannot really find those participants in the first round, then you cannot find in the second round or maybe in the third round. Maintaining the integrity of the original sample can be difficult over an expected period of time. Sometimes, really, as I say, you cannot maintain those who participate. So it can be difficult to show more than one variable at a time, because it's involved, different period of time and time changes. So sometimes it's very difficult, for researcher to track all those variables. This design also often need qualitative research to explain fluctuation in the data. Sometimes you see fluctuation in the data, but you don't understand why it's happened and how it's happened. So you need a qualitative research design again. So it means that you need a mixed method. A longitudinal research design also assumes present trend will continue and change. Means that the trend will be unchanged, and sometimes that this is not in the case. Most of the time, the present trend, it must be changed. It can take a long period of time to gather the result or the data. Sometimes it takes 5, 6, 10 years. There is a need to have a large sample size and accurate sampling to reach representativeness, in order to also representative the finding. You need a very large sample size, and you may start at the first round with a large sample size, but at the end, when you reach to the 5th or 6th or the 10th, the sample size will shrink, because you may not, as we say here, be able to maintain the integrity of original sample size, or those people who are interviewed or surveyed, they may not be reachable. Then we have observational design. So observational research is a qualitative research technique where researchers observe participant ongoing behavior in a natural situation. The purpose of this type of research is to gather more reliable insight. In other words, researchers can capture data on what participants do as opposed to what they say to do. So you do research based on your observation. So here you have advantage of observational research design is flexible and do not necessarily need to be structured, around the hypothesis about what you expect to observe. So data is emergent rather than pre-existing. The researcher is able to collect depth information about particular behavior, can reveal interrelationship among multifaceted dimension of the group interactions, and also you can generalize your result to real life situation, and useful for discovering what variables may be important before applying other methods like an experiment. Disadvantage, you have a finding may only reflect a unique sample population and thus cannot be generalized to other groups. There can be problems with bias of the researcher may only see what they want to see. And also, there is no possibility to determine a cause and effect relationship since nothing is manipulated. So, this graph will show us where we use exploratory or experiment or observational research. So, you ask this question, understanding of the problem. If we have poor understanding of the problem, we do in exploratory research, we explore. But If we really understand the problem, means that we have some basic information on the problem. So we need, you ask this question, we need to establish causality. If yes, then we do an experiment. If we do not need to establish causality, so the objective can be answered by asking a question. If we really need to ask question to answer the objective, then we ask this question: do we need to estimate the prevalence? Estimate the prevalence must mean that randomly select a sample or smaller group from the entire population you want to describe. So if you need to estimate the prevalence, then you do a survey questionnaire. But if you don't need to estimate the prevalence, that means you don't need to have sample size, then you do focus group discussion, or even you can do also in interviews. But if this problem, no need to ask questions. So we can answer the objective without asking a question, then we do observational research. We only observe, no need to go and interview people and ask them a question. So this is, we show you how and when you choose your research design. So it is based on your objective and based on the phenomenon that you want to study. So now, what are the type of data collection methods? So we have primary data and we have secondary. Primary data means that you do a survey, interview, focus group discussion, observation. Secondary means that you collect, the data is already collected, could be internal or external. So secondary data means data gathered and recorded by someone else prior to and for a purpose other than the current project. It is often could be historical, already assembled, and need no access to subject or respondent. That means no need to go and interview people. Could be as a time series, cross-sectional, as tables, as figures, whatever. So what are the common research objectives for secondary data research? We can use it for fact finding, identifying consumption patterns, for example, tracking the trend, or we can use it when we build models, estimating market potential, forecasting sales, selecting, a trade area and size, and also we use it as database development of prospect list, and on marketing where we enhance the customer list also. So what are the advantages of data of secondary data? It is inexpensive. Sometimes you can get it free, like World Bank or other database. Obtain rapidly, just one click, you can download a large amount of data. Information is not otherwise accessible and can be provided an insight for more formal research. But also it has this advantage. For example, you are not sure about the accuracy because it is not collected by you. Is it accurate or not? Data are not consistent with your needs. Maybe you are searching about happiness in the social perspective, but you found that on happiness in the economic perspective. Inappropriate unit of measurement. What you need to measure, for example, you want to study about poverty, your measurement poverty line income, but the data you got about poverty based on United Nations measurement. Time period inappropriate or outdated. You want data for 2000 to 2020, but you got from 1990 to 2000. Then we have a primary data. Primary data is a source where you as a researcher, you collect the data. It means you go to the field, you do a survey, you do a questionnaire, focus group discussion, and observation, whatever. So it's a primary data can be collected in a number of ways. However, the most common techniques are self-administrated surveys, interviews, observation, and experiment. Primary data collection is quite expensive because you need time also consuming to collect if you compare to secondary data. And primary data collection also may be only suitable method for some type of research, as I say, if you have defined or measured a variable in a way that does not have that type of data. So as I say here, this type of data or primary data analysis, interviews, questionnaire, focus group discussion, and others. Well, now, what is the design of sampling? Sampling is a fundamental part of statistics. Samples are collected to achieve an understanding of the population because it is typically not feasible to observe all members of the population. If you want to study about poverty, you cannot go and survey all poor people in Malaysia. There are millions. So you have to select a sample. To make it more understanding, so you have this is, for example, all the target population, Malaysian, those all study population, poor, or let's say this is all the poor Malaysian target population, extreme poverty. Then from that you will take a sample. So the target population is the total group of individuals from which the sample may be drawn. A sample is a group of people, who take part in the investigation. So the people who take part are referred as participants. So what is the frame and location of sampling? A sampling frame is a list of or other device used to define researcher population of interest. So the sampling frame defines a set of elements from which a researcher can select the sample. And an area probability sampling frame is primarily used only for an in-person survey research where interviewers approach each sample unit to complete an interview of the target population. Means that who will be your sample size and how you are going to approach them, how you are going to select them. This is the sampling frame. So we have so many techniques in sampling. So the most robust is random sampling, when you randomly select members from a population. So every member of a population has an equal chance of being selected. And another one is stratified sampling. You divide the target population as a whole to subgroups. Then from that subgroups, you choose samples. For example, here you're dividing the target population into important subcategories, selecting members in a proportion that they occur in a population. For example, if 2.5% of British are of Indian origin, so 2.5 of your sample should be of Indian origin, and so on. And we have volunteer. Volunteer when individuals who have chosen to be involved in the study, also called as self-selecting. For example, people who responded to an advert for participants. For example, you put this online surveys in Facebook. So you are not selecting them, but they are themselves volunteer. Now they see the link of the questionnaire, they participate. Then you have opportunity sampling, means that simply selecting only those people that are available at that time. For example, you go to a cafeteria, to shopping mall, and interview people who are available there. So what are the size of sampling? Sample size measures the number of individual samples measured in observations used for a survey. How much, if our population is 1,000, how much is our sample size? So we have here a method to calculate our sample size from the population. First, we have to know what is our population, how much, 1,000, 1 million. Then we calculate the sample size based on formula. So while calculating sample size, we should, as I say, first we know our population. Also, we should know the margin of error, the confidence level, and standard deviation. So I give you two famous formulas. First one is for Yamane's formula in 1976, and this formula is really simple. Equal n is, small n is sample size, big N is population, and E is the level of precision or sampling of error, which will be 95%, right? So it means 5% of error. So here n sample size equal to population divided by 1 plus population times E, or the error square, and you will find your sample size. Another formula also really famous about this KREJCIE and Morgan in 1970. Actually, I use it in my research a lot. It has a little bit complicated than the previous one. You have sample size equal, N is a population, right? P is the prevalence, and the prevalence is a number of people in the sample with the characteristic of interest. That means that people that, if you are talking, for example, about homeless, so those, how many homeless of people, divided by the total number of people in the sample. So the total of all homeless people, you know, we divide from those who are interested us, maybe in Kampar, in Pera. So a sample size here equal to chi square times n times p divide times 1 minus p divided by differential square times n minus 1 plus x square plus p times times sorry p times 1 minus p. So this is a bit complicated, but actually now if now we need to calculate, because these two authors provide for us this table. And here you will have this, the population, this sample size. If you have 10, you must survey them all. If you have 90, then sample size in 73. If you have 1000, then you have to survey at least 278. If you have 5500, then you have to survey at least 359. But you can see when we reach 1 million, we reach to this 384. If you have 10 million, also minimum is 384. If we reach 1 billion, is also 384. So the curve goes like that. So when we reach 384, it becomes like constant. Then, what is a research instrument? A research instrument is a tool used to collect, measure, and analyze the data, or what we call questionnaire, right? A research instrument can be a test, survey, scale, questionnaire, or even a checklist. To measure the strength of your study, it is important to use previously validated instrument. If you can find previous research that has this validated questionnaire, that's fine. But sometimes even you find a validated questionnaire, but that questionnaire you cannot take it 100%. You must adopt it and adapt it, or adapt it and adopt it, or to your study. So before you go to, you have to ask this question, how much time do you have? Not all instruments are readily available or easy to obtain. So like for you doing assignment or doing FYP, you may go for a research questionnaire, but you may not. Sometimes if your respondents are, let's say, high level of management, I think you don't have time to do that. But if your respondent, let's say, student, then easily to access to them, so you can have it. What is your budget? You have money for that or no? What is the instrument reliability and validity? Does the instrument measure what is intended, and does it measure its consistency? Let's say later we see about reliability. Will the instrument be available for your use or no? So this is a question you have to ask. So if you, let's say you went for a questionnaire design, you have to make sure that a questionnaire is a research instrument that consists of a set of questions or other type of prompt that aims to collect information from the respondent. Those questions must be related to your objective or your research objective. A research questionnaire is typically a mix of closed-ended and open-ended question. Open-ended, a long-form question offer the respondent the ability to elaborate in his thought or using his thought. But research questionnaire also were developed in 1838 by the Social Society of London. The data collected from the questionnaire can be both qualitative as well quantitative, and a questionnaire may or may not be delivered in the form of survey, but a survey always consists of a questionnaire. So what are the variables now, or the measurement of the variables? Before also you go and create your questionnaire, you must first measure and define your variables in order to have a very valid and reliable questions. Variables are measurement using an instrument or device or computer. The scale of the variable measured drastically the effect of type of analytical techniques that can be used of data, and what conclusion can be drawn. There are four scales of measurement: nominal, ordinal, and interval and ratio. The least amount of information is contained in a nominal scale data, while the most amount of information can be obtained from the ratio. The weakest, that means the nominal. The strongest is the ratio. So before you start, you have to measure your variables. What do you mean about that? So I give you an example here. When you want to measure your variable, is it the order of the data value is indisputable? Is it important or no? For example, the numbers on jersey, players jersey. That number doesn't mean anything, doesn't have any meaning, right? So it is not important. Then we call it nominal variable. So we can put, or for example, a party, we can put 1 BN, 2 pass, 3 DAP, 3 KPR, or we can put 1 as DAP, 2 BN, 3 MCA, whatever. So the order or the values doesn't make any sense. But if the values really have a meaning, then here you ask this question: does the values have a fixed unit of measurement? If no, you use ordinal. For example, satisfactory or not satisfactory, strongly agree, strongly disagree, 1 strongly agree, 2 agree, 3 neither agree or disagree, 4 disagree, 5 strongly disagree. That numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 really has a meaning. Sorry, data values have a fixed unit. So here the units they don't have fixed, because from 1 to 2, from strongly agree to agree, does not necessarily to be same like 3 to 4, from strongly disagree to disagree. That's not. So that is ordinal. But then you ask if that values have a fixed unit of measurement. If yes, then you ask if the 0 value means nothing. If the 0 value has meaning. So if it has meaning, we go to ratio variable. For example, body length, or body weight, or weight, or whatever. If the 0 does not have a meaning, then we use interval variable, like degree of Celsius. If we say 0 degree, that's not there is no temperature. There is temperature, but it is 0. But in the ratio, let's say if we say 0 kilogram is 0 kilogram, there is no weight. If we say we have 0 number, we have no student, that means no student. Then we come as I say, to reliability of the questionnaire. Reliability means that the question that you ask for your questionnaire, do the respondent understand those questions in the same way, in the same manner? Your design should indicate how to form a research question to ensure the standard of the result. Means that there is standard of understanding. You will only be able to reach the expected result if your design is reliable. So when you ask the question, if respondent A understand it in, let's say, form A, respondent B also understand it in form A, respondent C understand it in form A, then all respondent understand this question in the same form, then it is reliable. But if someone understanding in form A, another one understanding in form B, another one understanding in form C, then your question does not really reliable, because different people understand it in different way. Then we have the validity. Is the question valid? Means that the question you are asking really measure what it's supposed to measure. If you are measuring poverty, so the question you ask is really measuring that poverty or no. So the only correct measuring tools are those which help a researcher in gauging a result according to the objective of the research. The questionnaire developed from this design will then be valid. Then you have to consider again about the ethical consideration. According to Berman and Bell 2007, the following 10 points represent the most important principles related to ethical consideration. 1. Research participants should not be subjected to harm of any ways whatever. You cannot harm them or ask them to investigate in a harmful way. As I give an example, if you want to study abuse, do not go and take some people and abuse them and do an experiment about abuse. Respect for the dignity of a research participant should be prioritized. A full consent should be obtained from the participant prior to the study. They must agree. The protection of the privacy must be guaranteed, their names or whatever. Adequate level of confidentiality also of the research should be ensured. Anonymity of the individuals and organization participating in the research has to be ensured also. Any deception or exaggeration about the aim of the objective of the research must be avoided. Affiliation in any form, source, or funding, as well as any possible conflict of interest have to be declared. And any type of communication in relation to the research should be done in honesty and transparency. You cannot be biased, you have to be objective. Any type of misleading information as well as representation of primary data finding in a biased way must be avoided. So you cannot be biased in presenting the data or obtaining the data. And before you do you go to the real data collection, distributing research, you must do the pilot test. That pilot test will tell you if your questions are reliable and valid or not. A pilot test or pilot project or pilot study or a pilot experiment is a small scale of preliminary study conducted in order to evaluate feasibility, duration, cost, adventure, event, or improve upon and study design prior performance of the full scale. So if you, let's say, your sample size is 400, you may choose only to do pilot test on 50 people only. So pilot experiments are frequently carried out before a large-scale quantitative research in attempt to avoid time and money being used for an inadequately designed project. A pilot study is usually carried out on members of a relevant population. Of course, the members that you want to do a pilot test, they must be the same population. A pilot study is often used to test the design of a full-scale experiment, and it is a potentially valuable insight. And should anything be missing in the pilot test, it can be added in the full scale. So before you go to full scale, if your question is not reliable or has problem people understanding that question, you can restructure it again, or you can add more important question. So after you collect the data, you do the data analysis, you go to discuss about data analysis, an approach to this synthesize the data informational and or factual element to answer a research question, a method of putting together fact and figure to solve a research problem, or a systematic process of utilizing data and address a research problem. Also, we call it also breaking down research issues through utilizing controlled data and factual information. So what are the statistical methods? We have so many methods, something to do with statistics. So statistics is meaningful, quantitative, about sample of object, things, person, event, phenomena. So widely used in social science. So we have correlation, ANOVA, MANOVA, regression. We have econometric like Granger causality, co-integration, or Johansen configuration, ARDL, configuration, or TYD configuration, panel data. And we have two categories. We have descriptive statistics or inferential statistics. So in descriptive statistics here, for example, we have the use of information, explain, make abstraction of population phenomenon. A common phenomenon, for example, association with skewness and left skew tendency, or we call it cause relationship, if X then Y, or correlation, patterns, range, chi-square, t-test, two-way, ANOVA. This is all descriptive statistics. But we have some common mistake in data analysis. For example, a study, for example, you have an issue. An issue is to study factors that influence visitors to come to recreational sites. You use like a scale. It's wrong. Like a scale is not going to show you the factors that influence visitors. So what is the correct one? Data tabulation based on open-ended questionnaire survey, it could be the right one. Or you want to study about the effect of KLII on the development of CPAN. So you use also like a scale based on interviews is the wrong technique, but use descriptive analysis based on post on experimental investigation. Before KLII was built and after KLA was built, and you can see the development, changing in development. Also, another common mistake in data analysis, we have measure the influence of a variable on another. Maybe use a partial correlation like experiment coefficient, which is wrong. You may use regression parameters or finding the relationship between one and another variable. You use multidimensional scaling or like a scale is wrong. You must use a simple regression coefficient. Or maybe also to evaluate whether a model fit data better than others. You use R square, which is wrong. You may use t-test for model equivalence. Or evaluate accuracy, of prediction. Also using R square or F value is wrong. Maybe you hold out samples of MAPE or MAPE. Compare whether a group is different from another. Maybe you go and use multi-dimensional scale or like a scale is wrong. You must use two-way ANOVA or Z-test. Or maybe you want to determine whether a group of factors significantly influence the observed phenomenon. Then you also use multi-dimensional scaling or like a scaling, which is wrong. You must use MANOVA or regression. So other type of the data analysis, we have time series analysis. Time series analysis is statistical techniques that deals with time series data or the trend. So time series data means that the data is in a series of particular time. The data is considered in 3 times. So you have time series, a set of observation variable that variable takes in different time or time series data. Cross-sectional, a data of one or more variable collected but only in one time. But actually usually we don't call it as a time series here, but it could be a pool data, so a combination between cross-section and time series. So we have time series, cross-section, and pool data or longitudinal data or panel data. So in the time series, we have first thing that we have to consider is dependence. Dependence refers to the association of 2 observations with the same variable at a prior time of point. And the most important thing, we have to see if the time series is stationary or not. It must be stationary in order to do the co-integration. So stationary shows the mean value of the series that remain constant over time period. If past effects accumulate and the values increase toward infinity, then stationary is not met. So we have to do the first differentiation here. So used to make the series stationary, the D trend and the control of auto correlations. However, sometimes series analysis do not require differentiation, and over different series can produce inaccurate estimate. And after we do differentiation to get stationary, we go and put and check for specification. May involve the testing of the linear or a nonlinear relationship of a dependent variable by using models like ARIMA, ARC, GARCH, VAR, co-integration, and so on. So time series analysis Johansen test, for example, co-integration of Johansen. A Johansen test can be seen as a multivariate generation of the augmented Duquy-Fuller test. The generation of examination of a linear combination of variables of the unit root, and the Johansen test and estimation strategy or maximum likelihood makes it possible to estimate all co-integrating vectors when there are more than 2 variables. We are going to talk about that in data analysis later in week 10, I am not mistaken, about all the time series, Johansen, ARDL, GYDL, panel data, and cross-sectional data, so you don't need to worry. So I just show you here in your methodology, if you want to use time series data analysis, you just mention that you use time series analysis. So we have another one, ARDL. ARDL stands for autoregressive distributed lag. Regression model of this type have been in use for decades, but in more recent times they have been shown to provide a very valuable vehicle for testing the presence of a long relationship between economic series. Let me explain to you. In Johansen co-integration, all your series must be stationary at first difference. So if one of the variable is stationary at level or at second difference, then you cannot use Johansen. Sometimes it is impossible to get all your series are stationary at first difference. So it comes here ARDL. It doesn't matter if your series are stationary at level or first difference. Means that I0 or I1, you can use ARDL. But if, let's say, again here, some of the series are not stationary at neither in level I0 nor at I1 or at first difference, but some of them stationary at I2 or second difference. So also here we cannot use ARDL, also we cannot use Johansen. So what we use another method, we call it TYDL, and this is, we are going to discuss about it later. Then we have panel data analysis, or also known as longitudinal data or cross-sectional time series data. Is a data set in which the behavior of entities are observed across time. You have so many companies, so many countries, so many people, but you observe them in different time. Three entities could be states, companies, individual countries, and I say the two techniques mostly known in panel data: a fixed effect and a random effect. So how we determine panel model is fixed effect. So in order to determine the panel model, we conduct necessarily the test F test for the fixed effect and random also effect. So we use Hausman test is needed if you find both fixed and random effect. And we can see in the next slide the hypothesis. Once you finish with F and LM test, determine your model as shown in the following table list here. So if fixed effect, F test and wall test, this is the fixed effect, right? H0 is not rejected, that means no fixed effect. Then data are pooled, OLS. We use the normal OLS. H0 is not rejected, also no random effect. So no fixed effect, no random effect, we use pooled OLS, normal one. But if H0 is rejected, that means we use fixed effect. And H0 for random effect is not rejected, no random effect, we use fixed effect. But if the H0 is not rejected for fixed effect, that means there is no fixed effect. And H0 is rejected for random effect, that means random effect, so we use an effect model. In general, H0 is rejected for fixed effect, therefore we use random fixed and random effect model based on this. Either if it is H0 rejected for fixed effect or H0 rejected for random effect. Choose one of the two depending on the result. If this is come, then we use fixed effect. If this is come, reject random effect hypothesis, then we use random effect. So this Hausman test will tell us. So what are the things that you need to avoid to, in order, or the mistake that you need to avoid? Crystallize the research problem. You have to operability of it. Means most important, you have to operationalize your measurements and read literature on data analysis techniques to understand what data have been used and why they have used it and if it is suitable for your research or not. Evaluate various techniques that can be similar things to your research or with your research. Know what technique does and what does not in your particular study. Consult people, especially your supervisor, or expert in statistics. Pilot run the data to evaluate the result and see if your measurement is correct or no, reliable and valid or no. Do not do the research if your measurement is not correct, if you don't have reliability, if you don't have validity, if the method that you are using is not appropriate. And here we reach to the end of today's discussion. If you have any question, you may write your question in the comment and I try as much as I can to answer you. I wish you good luck and thank you very much.